So certain girls will need more physical, less physical. Certain girls will need more time versus less time, more value versus less value. I'd say, yeah, definitely every single girl is different. So you don't want to be, with any system, you don't want to be like thinking that you've discovered like the magic key or like the one simple ABC procedure that will fix everything. Don't ever think that. Just realize that you need to be calibrating, you need to be conscientious of things. That's actually one thing where when I put out the video, the whole currency video, I was a little concerned. I actually got some questions on this, where guys were like, this is like putting me in my head, this is making me think too much. I don't want you to think a whole lot about it. I want you to just kind of have it in like the back of your head, just as something that's there so that you can recognize. Just don't even think about like even I need to be building currency or I don't have enough currency or whatever. Just kind of keep it in the back of your mind so that when you make a mistake and like if you do something and it doesn't go off, it's just one more model for how you can understand that it happens. One more model for how you can calibrate the situation and learn in the future. Right? Don't start getting in the head and like trying to like assign yourself like I have 10 points of social currency. In order to escalate from like grabbing her hand, I need 2.2 points, so therefore I'll be left with. Don't think like that. So it's not a formula, it's not a mechanical thing, and it's not something that needs to be like understood exactly or precisely. It's just a general idea that you always should be building the value before you try and use it. That's the big thing I want to get across with it. Right? And so yeah, it definitely will be different for different girls. And also realize the other point that I made, which is that if you successfully escalate, that you actually build more currency, you build more value that way. And so for those girls that like being physical, you're going to be successful escalating with them a lot, and that's actually going to be the way to do it. Make sense?
Yep.
Also realize that there are other things that could require the points. Like say if it's a girl that's not physical, if it's a girl that likes the verbal game, a version of escalating on her is if you take the conversation from chit-chat, from just like, hey, let's go to XYZ place, or hey, what's your favorite color, and you start talking about her. You're like, hey, you know, what are you passionate about? What do you like to do in bed? That's an escalation, and that's a situation where you could be potentially getting resistance. And again, if you say to a girl, what do you like in bed, and she goes, oh, I'm not comfortable talking about that, then it went badly, and that's going to kill our social currency. But if you say, what do you like talking about, or what do you like in bed, and then you actually have that conversation, it's an intimate conversation, now you actually built that rapport, built that currency. So it's not necessarily that it's like one set thing, it's just this idea that you need to be building before you spend. Does that make sense?
Makes 100% sense.
Awesome. Cool. Other questions? By the way, if you guys are muted right now, I just unmuted you. So hopefully that'll work out. By the way, you guys, if you want, can ask questions on anything. It doesn't just have to be about the video. I'm basically here as a resource for you. The reason I put out the video is so that you have some content to begin with, and also so that like it's just to provoke questions. But feel free to ask, you know, particular sticking points, particular issues, anything you have that I can help you with in game. That's what I'm here for. Oh, and we'll probably go a little long on the session. We'll go a little past an hour because we started late. For anybody who is interested or cares.
Yeah, I've got a question about pulling.
Okay.
There was this girl I tried to pull, and she said like, yeah, I'm a good girl, and the girlfriend was also with her, so I thought like she didn't want to be seen like a slut, and she said like, I'm a good girl, I'm going home and I'll see you again. So I fixed another date for day 2, but my question is, was there a possibility to pull or not?
It's really tough to say without being there. It actually really is. There are certain times when you just won't go down, especially, you're right, with the friend there. It's always going to be more difficult than if you don't have the friend there. And certainly it is like, it's a reflection on her self-image, right? She doesn't want to be perceived as the slut amongst her friends. She doesn't want to go in that situation. My philosophy is anything's winnable, any situation's possible, but that might not always be the best approach, right? It might not be the best, most high percentage approach. Sometimes you actually do just need to do the day 2. So without doing it, I can't say.
I tried to go for like after party, but it didn't work, you know. But
yeah, that makes sense. Nice. Okay. Yeah, I honestly, as far as specific situations, as far as could I have pulled this one girl, that's really hard for me to answer without being there. What I would suggest, though, is push it to the point where you think that by pushing it, you're killing absolutely any chance of ever seeing her again. And stop right before that point. Does that make sense? So push it and push it and push it and try and make it happen. But then there's going to be a point where if you push it further, it is really awkward and creepy. And when that's the case, you need to stop and then chill back and then just go for the day 2. So push it as hard as you possibly can. Make the day 2 like the last option. But do be willing to stop short of being the creepy guy who will never see her. Does that make sense?
Yeah, awesome, man. Thanks.
Just you and
Awesome.
me again?
Okay, so I have a question here in the chat. It says, what are your opinions on doing more sets on a given night versus sticking with every set as long as we can when we go out?
Pretty weird. Yeah.
I think that's a great question. I think that's an absolutely great question, because for an advanced guy, that becomes one of the most important questions you're going to have in a given night. By the way, I don't know whose mic is making that loud noise, that whirring noise, but if you can figure out who it is and mute yourself, that would be great. The other thing I can do, if you guys want me to, is I can mute everybody and just take questions via chat. It's completely up to you guys. What do you guys prefer?
I'd say take via chat.
Take them via chat? Okay, I'm going to mute everybody and take the questions via chat. Let's do that. Actually, if you guys can mute yourselves, that'd be really good. So I'll take the questions via chat. Okay, so as you get more advanced, that does become a bigger issue, because basically you're going to have most of your sets go well as you get better. When you get better, it's not like you're going to be like bouncing from set to set and not having anyone like you or not having it go well. What will happen is you'll have a lot of these lukewarm sets where you could maybe get a phone number, you could maybe try and pull, or you could end up with what I call the worst set ever, which is the set that goes pretty well and takes 3 hours, and then you don't end up pulling and don't end up even like getting a solid phone number. Right? That's what I consider the worst set. I consider a blowout not that bad of a set. I consider the worst set to be you spend 4 hours with a girl and it goes nowhere. And so then in that case, since you want to avoid that, what you want to probably be doing a lot of is screening early in the set. Screen for what kind of girl she is, screen for logistics, screen for who did she come with, will she be able to get home, how far away does she live, those sorts of things, so that you don't spend 4 hours finding out after the fact that it couldn't work, or finding out after the fact that she's the designated driver for 20 people and there's just no way she can possibly come with you, and she lives an hour away and even a day 2 is impossible. That's the worst set, so try and avoid that. In terms of bouncing around versus sticking with the set, I would say that's a personal preference kind of a thing. Different guys game for different reasons. Some guys game because they want to get laid as often as possible. The guys who want to get laid as often as possible, they should basically bounce from set to set, and they should not stick very long on a particular set until they get a girl who's really, really into them. Because by doing that, they're going to screen and they're going to find the girl who's down and the girl who particularly likes them. Other guys, they game because they want the highest level of choice, or they want to be able to choose like the 10 or the girl who really stands out to them. In which case, what I would recommend for them to do is stick in there and try and stick it out. Try and make it work regardless of even if it's going badly, because that's how you're going to learn to do one shot, one kill, right? But what you should realize is if you do that, you're going to get laid less. If you stick on one set and try and make it work with that one set, it is definitely going to make it much harder for you to get laid on an average night. You'll get laid maybe like a third or a fifth as much as you would if you bounced around. The other thing I would recommend is recognize whether you're going out to try and pull or going out to try and learn. A lot of times it can be a good idea to stick in one set and try and make it work, not because it's the best thing to do for that set, but because it helps you to learn. Because by because it's very easy to become that guy that once you get a good response, once most of the time you go say hi to a girl, she likes you, it's very easy to be that guy that if you ever say hi and she doesn't like you, you're just like, fuck that, I'll just go find some other girl that does like you. But the problem with that is if you do that, you're never going to learn to turn the sets around. You're never going to learn to deal with the drama, to get over that hurdle at the start of the set. And if you don't learn that, then that's a hole in your game. And also, you'll limit yourself in terms of the type of girls you can get. You won't get girls that give a neutral bitch shield, which means you possibly won't be getting the hottest girls that you could. So those are my thoughts generally on that matter. But it's really a personal preference of deciding, do I want to get laid tonight, or do I want to get laid with the hottest possible girl? And also, what's my time horizon? Am I trying to learn, or am I trying to get an immediate result tonight? So it's kind of a judgment call, but those are the factors that would weigh into it. And I would say do what makes you happy. Do what makes you happy and do what makes the game fun for you and gets you what you're actually trying to get out of the game. So be very conscious of that as well. Let's see, what do we got? I'm just going up from the bottom. So how to isolate, hang on, let's see if I can open the chat. No, I cannot. Alright. Let's see.
I don't hear anything.
Final one. Can you talk about state pumping, keep your state if you're out solo? I feel like I'm not really enough.
Hello? Ah, I can hear you. I hear you.
A couple different ones. I'm just going to go from the bottom.
Is anyone else here?
Wow, there's a lot of these coming. Okay, so talk about state pumping, keeping your state up if you're out solo. Okay, so there's a couple different things in terms of pumping state and all sorts of state issues. First of all, if any of you guys have seen my particular videos, I like state much less than most of the other instructors, in the sense that I think that many people use it as an excuse, and I think that's a problem. So the first thing I'll tell you about state is never, ever, ever let it be an excuse. Right? If you're out of state and you see a hot girl, go talk to her anyway. Period. It's always better to do the approach shitty than to not do it at all. And so don't ever let state be an excuse. And also don't be the guy that if you see a hot girl, you have to go talk to like 3 not hot girls first to build momentum and then go talk to her. Because that's saying to yourself that you're unworthy as well. So don't be that guy. But that said, in terms of keeping your state up, there are a lot of different things that you can do. The thing that I do, first of all, internally, is I just derive my state from taking right action. I derive my state from the fact that as every single time I take a positive step, I take a step in the right direction, it makes me feel better about myself, and that actually builds my state. That's how I personally do it, but that's a long-term solution. That's a solution that works over a week or a month or 12 years in the game. In terms of actually like keeping your state up, while you're out, if you like to generate state, I'll give you a couple physiology things that you guys can do. First one, anybody who likes to dance, dance. There's a reason why girls are in state in the club. There's a reason why girls have fun in the club. And there's a reason why girls even go out and then can even like plausibly claim that they're not trying to meet a guy. And that's that they actually enjoy the club for itself. They enjoy the music. They enjoy the dance. Like, have you guys ever just sung along to a song in your car at the top of your lungs? It's actually pretty fun. Right, and so you can sing along to the music in the club and actually enjoy it. The problem with this though is, if you're like, I'm singing along to the song in order to chase state, I'm singing along to the song in order to feel good, then it's not going to work for you. But what I'm saying is, if you actually enjoy singing, then sing. If you actually enjoy dancing, then dance. If there's anything else you actually enjoy doing in a club, if you enjoy playing like Duck Duck Goose by touching girls' heads, if that amuses you, do it. So do whatever's amusing to you, and don't try and make it work. Don't try and get a result by doing it. Just do it because it amuses you, right? It's just the basics of self-amusement. But don't self-amuse because self-amusing is the right thing to do. Self-amuse because you're self-amusing. Also, other things that you can do in terms of physiology. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with like the Jesse Crisp laugh. Anybody who's been to some of Owen's seminars probably knows it. But one thing I'll have students do on a boot camp is just literally, I'll put a timer on them for a minute, and I'll tell them to laugh as loud as they can and as crazy as they can for a minute straight, which is actually kind of difficult to do, and it's actually a really good ab workout even. But by laughing for a minute straight, first of all, they look ridiculous and they can't worry about being judged. But secondly, just the very act of laughing, you're acting like an alpha male, you're acting like someone who's having fun, and your physiology, because you're acting like you're having fun, starts to take on that you're having fun. And so the laughter actually becomes real laughter within a minute, and you actually are having a good time. So it puts you in state. The other things you can do along these lines are shouting at the top of your lungs, because again, I usually recommend doing this outside the club, like just like that out on the street or whatever, just go shout at the top of your lungs and then run back in the club. But again, you're mimicking being unstifled, right? Because it's not something you could do if you were stifled. If you can do it, it actually does unstifle. The other one is look in the mirror and either smile, wink, or smirk at yourself for like a minute straight. And that, again, because you're physiologically being in state, will help you get in state. So any of those physiological things you can do, they work. They work as like crutches to get you in state. But the biggest thing that will get you in state is just releasing outcome and just taking the action. When I've had my worst nights, like when I have nights where I just absolutely can't get anything done, where every approach goes badly, where the girls are rejecting me left and right, typically the best thing that I can do is just accept that I'm going to have a bad night. If I just accept that I'm going to have a bad night, I'm like, look, this is just going to be a shitty night. I just expect that I'm not going to take a girl home this night. I expect every girl's going to reject me, and I'm just going to be happy with whatever comes good. And also, because I'm going to get rejection and bad shit anyway, I'm going to try weird things because I may as well get rejected doing something interesting. So then I start doing things that are interesting to me rather than doing things to try and push a button. And ironically, usually it works. And even if it doesn't work, it makes my night fun so that at the end of the night I don't feel shitty about it. It makes my night so that I go home and I'm happy about what I learned, even if I didn't end up taking a girl home. So the biggest thing for me is to just release that from outcome and just recognize, just say to yourself in your head mentally, okay, I guess nobody's going to like me tonight. Oh well, I'm just going to do the right thing. And that's the best way to get through state when you're solo, in my opinion. But all those other physiology things definitely do work and definitely can help, especially if you're a guy that responds well to those. Some guys respond more well to those. Other guys respond more well to the ideas in their head in terms of where their state comes from. So be conscious of which one you are, and then use what's more appropriate for you. What do we got? Seems to be an interesting parallel between concepts of social currency and the idea of buying temperature. The social currency seems to be more on the reservoir of trust, compliance, sense of familiarity, while buying temperature seems to be more the arousal of the girl. Other than that, they seem to share a few mechanics, perhaps even psychological. So actually, how do they correlate in action? Wow, I think that's actually a really great understanding of it. I would say buying temperature, yeah, same thing, is that both the concept of social currency and buying temperature are things that will help you to get through an immediate obstacle. Right, they're things that will help you get through an immediate obstacle. But I would say one of them is the buying temperature. I think is more powerful. Like it's a bigger, like it's more explosive, whereas the social currency is more like a slow burn, like a slow, steady burning fire. And so the buying temperature is actually more important in any given moment. Like if you don't have a lot of social currency, but you do have a lot of like buying temperature, it's a very emotionally aroused situation. There's a lot of excitement. You can get away with a lot even if they don't trust you. And it will probably be the bigger factor. But the problem with the explosion is it just pop and then it's done, right? And so it doesn't really last. Because buying temperature is based on whatever chemicals they're feeling in their body at that moment. Whereas social currency to me is based on whatever commitments the girl has made, whatever things she has logically decided for herself, or whatever things she's agreed to herself that she has to justify and rationalize. And so in any given moment, those aren't going to be as strong because they're not right on the surface. They're like deep-seated things that aren't like just right on the tip of her tongue, right on the front of her mind. But it will last longer. And so I would suggest that the proper way to game, if there is such a thing as proper way to game, is that the best way to motivate a girl in the short term is buying temperature. The best way to motivate her to like go dance with you right when you meet her, or to like open a set, is buying temperature, right? And that's actually maybe why you can open, in spite of the fact that she doesn't know you, in spite of the fact that you don't have any like currency built up. She has no reason to talk to you. Whoever is that, can you please mute that? So the buying temperature can get you over that hurdle, and it can make a lot work in the short term. But the problem with buying temperature is it is literally a chemical in your body. You have to realize that emotions that people feel, they literally are chemicals in their body. It's the same as shooting up with heroin or drinking alcohol. It's in your body. So over time it will dissipate. And when it dies, when that chemical is not in your body anymore, then there's no longer that commitment. So that's why you get flaking. That's why cold approach is such a flake heavy thing, and it always will be. No matter how good you get, it will always be flake heavy because the buying temperature goes away. The emotions they get flushed out of the body over time, and then it just doesn't even make sense to act that way anymore. And that's why social currency is actually so powerful in addition to buying temperature, because I've used the ideas of commitment and consistency, or intrigue game, or other words I've used for it in the past. But why that's important in addition to the buying temperature is if they've made that logical commitment, now even when they're not in that emotional state, they still know they made that logical commitment. They've still committed to it, right? Which is why getting girls, a big thing I'll do a lot of times when girls really like me is I'll get them to confirm to it. I'll get them to say, like, tell me how much you like me. Tell me like this is special, or like or I'll be like, you don't really like me, etc. And I'll get them to be like, no, I do like you, because by getting them to actually verbally say it, even though in that moment you don't have to, even though in that moment it's overkill because it's obvious they like you, but by getting them to verbally acknowledge it, you make them consistent to it. It's similar to, if any of you guys have read Cialdini, Influence, How and Why People Agree to Things. He talks about how they brainwash people, or used to brainwash people in these internment camps during some particular war in Asia. But the way they did it, they would get them to agree to a very tiny concession or admission about communism, because it was a capitalist versus communist war. They'd be like, admit that communism, in principle at least, is kind of a nice idea if it actually could work, even though you know it can't work. But if it could work, it's kind of a good idea, or something like that. Or they'd say, like, admit that capitalism isn't perfect. Admit that it's a great system, it works, it gets the free markets, but admit that it's not perfect. And they just get people to admit to that little tiny thing, and then they get them to admit to a little more, like admit, okay, so tell me one thing that's wrong with capitalism, et cetera, et cetera. And just by getting those little tiny concessions over time, they actually made the person have to stay consistent to them and gradually change their entire persona. It actually molded their entire belief system based on these tiny concessions. And so that's the point of actually getting someone to take action on an emotion. If they just have the emotion in their body, eventually the emotion will dissipate. But if they take an action in the real world, that action exists for them forever and always occurred. And so they always have to be logical to it. They always have to justify it. It always has to be part of their mental model. So that's why it's so powerful to actually use the buying temperature, which is one of the best tools you have in game. It's an amazing, amazing tool. But use that and get some level of commitment from them while they're in that high buying temperature state. Get them to commit to something. That also might be why the paradox that I talked about in the video with the social currency, why when they agree to something, it makes it work more, right, is because now they do have that principle, that commitment, that consistency. They have to be loyal to it. So I think those are two ideas that really actually work together. I would say that the buying temperature is mostly what you should be working on and mostly what you should be focusing on, especially early in the set. But I'd say definitely be conscious of trying to run a set where it's not entirely buying temperature, but where you have some commitment and consistency growing as well. All right, what else we got? There's the go up. We're just going to go to the bottom. We're going to randomize the process a little bit. How do you deal with expectations? Pulling a threesome. Talk to Jeffy about that one. What kind of small concessions are you aiming for the girl to accept her frame and the way she's bred? Okay. I'm going to take this question. What kind of small concessions should you aim for the girl to accept to frame her in a way that she is pursuing you for sex? That's a really interesting question. That's actually kind of two questions at the same time. On the one hand, you're saying what are the concessions that lead up to sex. The other question you're asking is how do you flip the script on the girl? In terms of the how to flip the script, I'm going to introduce you guys to an idea that Ryan talked about at World Summit, not this year, but last year and the year before that. And his idea basically, there's this thing he calls it sneaking it past the goalie. And sneaking it past the goalie basically means that you say a bunch of different things that are potentially objectionable at once. Excuse me, I itch on my nose. A bunch of things that are objectionable at once. And by doing that, they can't object to all of them, so they have to let some of them slide through. So just one-liner example of that, he would say to a girl, as he said, like, I want to have unprotected sex with you tonight, and then she'd be like, no, you unprotected sex is wrong. But she just, like, by not dealing with both issues, the sex and the unprotected, she actually leaves open the idea of, like, protected sex. The other thing that he'll do sometimes is he'll monologue stuff. So a monologue basically would be, if he was to say to a girl, this is going to sound a little crazy as I say it, but he'd be like, yeah, I think it's so good that we really enjoy each other's presence and company and that we have this good vibe together. Now, I'm not saying, like, that it's, I've just met you and I don't want you to, like, think that, like, I'm saying I'm in love with you or anything. I also don't want, like, if we were to go home tonight, I don't want you to be, like, signed in blood that anything would happen. Because, I mean, obviously, one thing could happen, another thing couldn't happen. I'm also a very shy guy. I don't normally talk to girls like this. So, I don't want it to be signed in blood, but you know that I enjoy you, and, like, if we didn't go home and get to know each other, it might make me a little bit sad. But that's to say, I don't want to put pressure on you, and if you want to walk away, you totally can right now. And so it's not a big deal. We don't have to go anywhere. But I like that we like each other. So by putting all that stuff out there, and by the way, he doesn't do that all the time. It's just once in a while he'll throw in some random thing like that. But by putting it out there are a lot of potential things that the girl could object to. There are a lot of attempts to escalate. There were a lot of presuppositions about the nature of the relationship, things like that going on, and so she can't object to all of them at once. by throwing them all out there. So that's one sort of like sneaky, manipulative way to frame it. But the big thing to do in terms of when you're trying to reframe someone, especially if you're trying to like subtly change the nature of the interaction or subtly move an interaction in a particular direction, is to not be super overt with it. Don't ever like make it an argument. Don't ever like just point out to the girl, be like, I know you like me, I can tell, right? That's very confrontational. That's very like in her face, and it's something that she's just obviously has to object to. She doesn't really have a choice but to object to it, and she's going to object strongly. It's her most natural inclination to object to it. But on the other hand, if she says something to you that's a bit of a shit test, and you go, oh, that's really sweet, I'm flattered. Anyway, my little sister, da-da-da-da-da-da, and just keep talking like it was no big deal. Now it would be weird and awkward for her to go back and mention that thing. Right, so if she goes back and mentions that thing, now she's being extremely reactive to you, which is actually her committing to liking you in a certain way. Or if she just lets it slide, now you snuck one past the goalie, in Ryan terminology. You snuck one past the goalie, you got that idea into the conversation, and so by getting that idea into the conversation, you made it more sexual than it otherwise would have been. So that's one thing that you can definitely do, is that sort of thing. So in terms of what to do to make her do those little concessions, I would just suggest putting them in little increments amid the rest of what you're doing. Also, you can do physical concessions, right? Like you can just like reach out and like just grab her hand as you're talking to her, and once you've held hands with her, now you've crossed that physical threshold. So, but you want to do that again as subtext. You don't want to be that guy, that creepy guy who you're talking, and you go totally silent, and then grab her hand while you're totally silent. Because that's creepy. Then she can't justify that it just happened. But if you're just talking and it just happened and it's subtext, you don't talk about it, then it's totally okay, and then you can get away with it. Always remember what girls want. What girls really want is for it to just happen. What girls really want is to not have responsibility for anything sexual. So make sure that as you're escalating, you give them that deniability. If you do, typically your escalations will be accepted well. In terms of specifically what the frames are along the way to her pursuing you for sex, anything that you can do that implies that you are cute or pre-selected, have had other girls in your life, or that she's just similar to other girls in what she says, will help you along that line. The other thing that I was going to say, what was I going to say? Oh, the other thing that you can do is take away her objections first. That's the biggest one I probably do. Is whatever objection she's going to give you, like, this is moving too fast, I'm not that kind of girl, I don't do this on a first date, I have to get up early in the morning. I would suggest giving her those objections ahead of time. And in fact, just giving her those objections, even if you're not logically saying to her, you are pursuing me for sex, or you're not like forcing her to agree that she's pursuing you for sex, at least you're putting in her mind that you think that's the case, which is almost as good. Do you understand that? Like she doesn't have to necessarily agree that she's pursuing you for sex, but if you just have put it out there that you think that's the case and she doesn't deny it, that's enough, right? And then if she does deny it, now she's being reactive to you, and now at least that topic's on the table, and she's trying hard to impress you, so that's not a bad thing either. So it's one of those situations where it's like heads I win, tails you lose in that case, in the sense that if she accepts it, she's on board. If she doesn't accept it, at least you're moving in the right direction. So those are the types of things that I would suggest doing with regards to that. Let's see. Talking to girls with their parents, approaching lesbians. Those are fun. In terms of difficult logistics, i.e. talking to girls with parents, talking to girls in with guys, talking to girls in, if it's like some kind of work function where it'd feel really slutty for them to talk to you, etc. In those sorts of circumstances, what I would suggest that you do is recognize what the biggest obstacle you're facing is. Recognize that sometimes the biggest obstacle isn't getting the girl to like you. Sometimes the biggest obstacle is getting the situation to accept you. And getting the girl to like you will just come naturally, or maybe it won't. But the fact of the matter is, even if you do get them to like you, it's not enough. It's not a situation where just getting them to like you will get you the result. Remember your end game not to get a positive emotion, not to get a smile or a giggle from a girl. You're in the game to get laid. You're in the game to get a successful set that can go all the way to sex. So if you know going in that you're going to get the girl to like you, but then she's going to get dragged away, it's not smart to get her to like you. It would actually be smarter to deal with the situation, have her not like you at first, but have her in a situation where she's going to remain in your presence so you have time. And then eventually over that time you could get her to like you. So don't focus on that first, focus on the scenario, focus on the situation first. So in the case of like a girl with a parent or a mother or whatever, I would just have a conversation with everybody, and I would actually ask for the permission, essentially, like, of the parent, especially it works better with mothers than with fathers. But basically tell the mom that you think that the daughter's very cute and you're tempted to I don't know if hit her is the right word. You're very intrigued by her and you'd like to get to meet her, and you think you obviously did a good job raising her, that sort of thing. Flatter the mom and get that permission, and then that'll buy you that window to talk to the daughter. Is one way. The other way that you can do it, though, the total polar opposite, is go full asshole. You have to go one or the other. You can either be nice to everybody and really be accepted, and then work your way into it, or you can go total full asshole. And total full asshole would be just fuck the parents, just like grab the girl or just like talk to the girl one-on-one, and then just close really fast, and just like deal with the fact that the parents are going to hate you, but hope that she actually takes your call later or like rebels against you, etc. That's more applicable, not as much with the parents, because parents will be tough. But in other social situations, like if she's at a work function or if she's with other guys, that sort of thing. The other thing that you can do in these awkward situations is make the clothes comfortable for her. Give her some plausible reason for the clothes, even if she knows it's not legitimate. I think Julian mentioned in one of his videos when he talks to girls that have boyfriends or girls that are with guys, he'll tell them he's gay. He'll like tell them I'm gay, because that gives the plausible deniability that it's okay to talk to him. Specifically when I'm closing, say that I'm closing in like trying to get a number from a girl who's in a group of her friends, maybe I'll go out of my way in the set to make sure that we have some sort of commonality in work or some common hobby where I can be like, yeah, I'll give you a ring and just give you the information about that like rock climbing thing that we talked about, or yeah, I'll give you that work information so that we can compare notes. And then even if you have to later, you can just whisper in her and be like, I want to talk to you outside of work as well, just so she knows. But the point is, so that at that moment when she's giving you the phone number, or the moment when she potentially could look slutty or it could look wrong, you're making it acceptable for her in front of her friends. So that can be a really big one. The other one with hired guns, like say if they're working, a lot of times they're either being watched or there's a camera on them or something where they could get in trouble if they give you a phone number. So a lot of times the best way to do things in that case is to exchange the number in a way that's non-obvious, right? Either get her to say the number to you and tell her you'll repeat it, or take out a napkin and be like drawing something on the napkin anyway, or showing her something or whatever, and then in the context of that just get the number on the napkin as you go. Something like that, so it's not super obvious what's going on, so it doesn't make them look slutty. A lot of times the difference in those situations, between closing and not closing, won't be how much the girl likes you. It'll be if you structure the situation in such a way that she can plausibly give you the clothes. A lot of times girls would love to give you a number, girls would love to hang out with you, but you haven't structured a situation where they can do it without appearing slutty or without it affecting or ruining some other thing in their life, in which case they'll say no. So be very, very conscientious of managing your logistics and managing the girl's situation. Okay, what's the best way to get away with moments where you realize the conversation's going down or your mind goes blank? Okay, so this is a really interesting one that a lot of guys run into. I would say probably the biggest question I get on boot camp over and over and over again is exactly this, which is, what do I do when I run out of things to say? So that's essentially what this question is. What do I do when I run out of things to say? There's a few different answers to this and a few different ways to approach it. The first answer is say anything. Literally say anything. I think for new guys that have taken the Tyler hot seat, he says, like, what does he do when he sees a girl? He says, all he thinks in his head is do something. And he says, what is something? Something is anything. It doesn't matter if it's good, it doesn't matter if it's bad, right or wrong. Just do anything. And so by just doing anything, you essentially, it may or may not work, but it's something. There's some stimulus for the girl to grasp onto. and it's better than nothing. Your odds with doing nothing or saying nothing were 0%, and by saying anything, your odds are now greater than 0%. The other concepts with this is, Julian has this great concept, which is edit after the fact, not before. Rather than try and go in your head and figure out the right thing to say and then put it out as the right thing to say, instead of doing that, just say anything. Say whatever random thought comes into your head. If you say, like, that couch over there is red, that's fine. That's better than nothing. And then if it comes out, like, lame or comes out weird or whatever, be smart enough and be calibrated enough, and this comes with field experience, to recognize, A, that what you just said was dumb and you need to change, be like, no, I'm just kidding anyway, next topic. Or recognize that also when you're getting an immediate bad reaction, like notice that little flinch when she starts to say, when she starts to react badly to something, and then you can say, no, just kidding, right? For example, if you were like going to say like, oh, baby, I love you, you go, oh, baby, I love, and then she starts to like flinch, you go, I love the way that you look when you're looking like such a dork, something like that. Because now you've micro-calibrated, you've instantly changed it. So the point is you could have, or if you say I love you when you're being so awkward, right? That sort of thing. You can micro-calibrate, you can change it after the fact. Also, if you're like you're like a dog, and she like, sometimes they'll react well to that, but sometimes if she's not, then she's like, yeah, you're like a dog, like one of those, those cute little puppies, the like the adorable ones that and then you change dog to puppy, reframe it really fast, and go with it. So the point is, you can always say, I'm sorry. You can always admit something was lame. You can always cut the subject. But what you don't want is that awkward pause silence where you're trying too hard to figure it out. So the first thing is just say anything. And along those lines, lower your standards for what comes out of your mouth. Recognize that most conversation is shit. If you ever, this is an interesting exercise, just go on like a public transportation of some kind and just listen to the few people that are actually talking. Or an airport's a good example. Listen to their conversations, eavesdrop for a minute, and see how lame most conversation is. It's really pretty pathetic. Like, it's really unentertaining, boring, meaningless, worthless shit. So recognize that your conversation doesn't have to be that much better than that for it to be good. So just blurt it out. That's the biggest thing I can tell you, is just blurt anything. Now, as an exercise to get used to doing that and to make that better, what I would suggest is, you can look around you right now, or look around you at any time, and just pick a random thing. Like right now I see a couch, a chair, a TV, a door, a camera. I can pick any one of those words, say I go camera. And then I say, okay, make a story about a camera. Like, make up a story about a camera. And if I do that, the rules of the game are, you have to make it up instantly. You can't think it, and you can't go silent. You have to talk for a minute straight. And that just forces you to just babble. Essentially, that's what you want to learn to do, is just learn to babble, right? And it doesn't, if I say camera and I don't have a camera story, I just start talking about anything and then incorporate a camera. Be like, yeah, so there's this desk in front of me and I'm sitting at it and da-da-da-da-da-da. Oh, and this reminds me of a time when, camera. The point is, just get your lips moving. Just start vomiting out words and realize that you can edit them, you can censor them as you go. Also realize, once you've started talking, you can keep talking for as long as you need to. And so part of this exercise is to prove that to yourself. Part of this exercise, if you do it often enough, you'll actually get really good at it, and you will have a lot to say. You will find, ironically, if you just force yourself to start talking on anything, that something good will eventually come out. And you can actually, if you really want to be like structured, you can actually wait till that something good comes out and then remember it, and then you can use it later and grow your repertoire that way. And that will really be your repertoire. But the biggest thing I can say in terms of any of the what do I do when I run out of things to say, is just recognize that anything is good enough, and recognize you can always edit it. If it sucks, you can always edit it. Alright, awesome. Okay, so this one's interesting. Is there a quick way of calibrating between the nice guy currency end of the spectrum and the beast mode end? Obviously, the latter can result in many blowouts. The former can result in no results, no kiss close. Is it just lots of experience that gets you nicely calibrated, or are they mental shortcuts you can share? Okay, so first of all, unfortunately, yes, a lot of it probably will be experience-based, like everything in the game. So you'll learn that calibration over time. The big model that I will tell you in terms of always knowing whether to be nice guy or boy or asshole in terms of your game is, I always like to think of it in terms of value and comfort, because those are the two things that girl needs in order to sleep with you. Value is just basically the idea that you're worthy, that you have genes good enough for hers, that you wouldn't like taint or tarnish her by putting your genes inside of her. And then the comfort is the idea that she actually has access to that value. Because what a girl really wants in terms of evolution would have been to get the big nasty alpha guy that she doesn't deserve, but she wants him to actually stick around. She would want him to help her raise the kid, because in an evolutionary environment, raising a kid without a father is essentially like almost a death sentence for the kid. So she would rather get the guy who's a little more chode but will actually stick around, rather than get like the alpha male that will ditch her. And then a lot of girls, obviously, they would have adapted by getting the chode to stick around and then just fucking the alpha male on the side, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, those of you who have like had sex with girls that have boyfriends and etc. But the point here is that she wants both. She wants some level of value and some level of comfort, because even though girls are willing to do the whole like date the chode, fuck the player kind of thing, the girl's dream really is to find both traits in one guy, or to find some combination or some amount of both traits in the one guy to justify it. So in that context, try and keep in mind where you're at. Keep in mind whether you're in a situation where you need more value or you need more comfort. Now, signs of that. When do you need more value? When do you need more comfort? Typically, if a girl is responding to you instantly all the time and very reactive, but won't let you escalate physically, you have plenty of value, you need comfort. So, for example, if you're texting with a girl and she always texts you back right away, she always even sends you lengthy response, double text you, but just isn't meeting up with you, in that situation, you should calibrate and say, okay, look, she's very reactive, she's very on board with everything I'm doing, she's very eager to continue this interaction, very eager to be part of it, but she won't meet up with me. Why is that? Okay, probably she feels a little uncomfortable. So you should work on building that just conversational vibe a little bit, so that she feels more comfortable hanging out with. The same would be if there's a girl who will go out on dates with you over and over again, but then she won't physically escalate much, or she seems to be resistant to physical escalation, in which case I would focus on building more comfort. On the flip side would be the girl who tells you a lot of sweet things about yourself, compliments you a lot, does a lot of these logical indicators of interest, but then isn't really very responsive to your text, gets back to you a long time later, or within the conversation, you always seem to be having to do the work for the conversation. She's not pursuing it. She's not, if it goes silent, she doesn't fill the silence. If you ask her a question, sometimes she'll be busy with something else, and then she'll turn a minute later and be like, hey, what was that? I'm sorry. But yeah, she gives you good comments, says you're a really nice guy, or a sweet guy, I love hanging out with you, that sort of thing. In that sense, in that sort of circumstance, it's almost like she has the logical part but not the emotional part. In that case, you're a little bit too much the nice guy. You're a little bit too much the safe option. And in that case, you probably want to do something to mix it up, something to offend and shake it up a little bit. So that would be my advice for you there. So I guess a good shorthand, this may not be entirely accurate, but a good shorthand would be if the things that are instinctive and unconscious are good, it probably means you have value. If the things that are conscious and logical are good, it probably means you have a lot of comfort. So if they're both good, then you're great, you're golden. If you're having one without the other, then you can calibrate that and figure out which one you have more of, and then behave in the way to get more of the other one. And recognize that the ways to build the value are things like breaking rapport, being unavailable, showing you have options, meeting, self-amusing, not pursuing certain conversational threads. Whereas the things you can do to build comfort are spending more time with the girl, opening up to the girl, letting her get to know you, sharing common interests, that sort of stuff. So any of those things are more comfort building. Also, agreeing with her conversational thread, letting her talk and just sitting and listening, those sorts of things build comfort. So those are ways you can actually physically do it. But in terms of knowing how to do it, I'd say, yeah, look at the instinctive versus the uninstinctive. Look at her immediate snap response, and then look at her logical response, and calibrate the two. The logical response being positive means a lot of comfort, typically, and then the snap response being positive means a lot of value. So if you're getting the snap response but then a very negative on the logical, that would tell you lots of value, no comfort. Take your time, get to know her, build that comfort. All right, see what else we got. Okay, I'm pretty new to games, so I stick to 1 to 2 venues or try as many as possible. I'll just answer this briefly. If you're super new to game, the biggest thing is go out, period. The venue doesn't matter. Go out, whatever is going to get you out is the right thing to do. So if there's 1 or 2 places you're comfortable going, go there, even if it's comfortable, even if it's not optimal for improving in your game, just get out, just get in the field, do whatever it is. So you don't have to like push yourself to go to the hardest venue, or push yourself to go to the venue where your game sucks or where there's a particular thing you're trying to work on. Just get out. Do whatever's comfortable for you and try and game as much as possible wherever possible, and don't worry about results. However, as you get better, I actually do recommend mixing up your venues for a few different reasons. Number one, you'll face different obstacles in different venues. You'll face a very different type of game in a loud dance club than you will in a quiet lounge. And even if you plan on gaming in a quiet lounge, by learning to deal with the obstacles of the loud dance club, you're going to improve your game, and that improvement will carry over everywhere. So I definitely recommend doing different types of venues and doing venues that challenge you. I personally would say like 1 in 4, 1 in 5 times I go out, I'd like to go to a venue I don't like as much, a venue that really challenges me, because by doing that, I'm going to force myself to grow in the game rather than stagnate. So that's important in terms of type of venue to go to. In terms of specifically just going to different venues, even if they're the same type, I actually like that too. Not for the newbie so much. For the newbie, just get comfortable and go out a lot, and then you can work on this. But for someone who's a little more advanced, I actually recommend going to new venues as well, and here's why. There's this theory that Tyler put out to me a while ago, which I actually really like, which is basically that anytime you're in a new social setting, anytime you're in a new place that you've never been, in a new situation you've never been, the most typical human thing to do is to take your time and try and feel it out before you take any risks. And that makes sense. If you look at evolution, say that you're in a situation, you just met a new tribe of people, you're in a new situation, you have to be very careful because it is literally a matter of life and death, right? If you walk up to the chief's like wifey and he objects, you're dead. So you have to be very careful to understand where the value is in that situation, where the value, who has the value, what's creating the value, what are the factors being evaluated for value, etc. And then you also sort of need to calibrate what's safe and what's not, what you can get away with. And that's actually the smart, prudent way to handle a new environment. And so that's what we naturally, instinctively do. If we walk into a place we've never been, the most natural thing to do is to get stifled, stay out of everybody's way, be quiet, and just like look around and figure things out first. Even maybe like going back a few different times, rather than even doing anything. So instinctively, that's what your body wants to do when you walk into a new club you've never been to. It wants to look around, figure things out, figure out how things work in this new place, and then maybe take a move after that. But what you need to do in cold approach is be bold and actually just take that risk. And so by forcing yourself to go to these new venues, you force yourself to go through that scenario. You force yourself to go through the toughest possible version of that, which is going to help you in terms of your inner game, in terms of your sense of entitlement, in terms of the idea that a lot of people have situational confidence. A lot of people, if they're put in a situation where they're the leader of a group, will start acting confident, will start bossing people around. But if they're just put in a situation where everybody's equals, they'll never step up. Right, and so by forcing yourself to go to a new venue where the natural thing is to observe and not do anything, and then stepping up, you're going to force yourself to actually become much more of an alpha male much faster than you would if you didn't go through that. The other thing you'll do is you'll prove to yourself that you can do these crazy, risky things and not die. You can go approach a girl, and if you get a good reaction, that'll help build your state. If you get a bad reaction, then nobody's going to kill you. Then it'll actually prove to your mind on a very deep level that it's that it is safe to do this thing, that you're safer than you think, so you can get away with it. So I really do actually encourage going to new venues a lot as you get more advanced, even if it's, especially different types of venues, because it'll force you to deal with different challenges, but even if it's the same type of venue, just go from like one pub to a different pub sometimes, or one club to a different club sometimes, just so that you don't allow yourself to get too comfortable in that one place and make that your home base, to make that like, I'm comfortable there, but I'm not comfortable anywhere else. So I really encourage you guys to do that. Alright, so gaming girls at work. Okay, this is an interesting question. In terms of gaming girls at work, first thing I'm going to say is try not to do it if you value your job. It's probably just not worth it. Okay, so that's the first advice I'm going to give you. I'm sure you guys have heard that before from many, many people. Don't shit where you eat. I had a rule. I lived in this, when I was in LA, I lived in this really nice apartment complex that had like actually some very cute people in it. But I had a rule, which was I don't date anyone who lives in my apartment. And the reason for that is that, and it wasn't even that I was worried about like it looking awkward or embarrassing or anything like that, or that I was worried that they'd hate me if it went bad. The reason is by dating someone that's in my apartment, I make it much harder for me to date anyone else because I'm going to at some point have them over. It's just going to create drama. It's just asking for an issue, right? And so for me to date someone who's in my apartment, they'd have to be way, way, way better than someone who's not in my apartment because they're hurting my opportunities with other people, or they're hurting my opportunities to create the harem that I want or create the lifestyle that I want. So that's just an apartment, but work's worse because work you have ethical issues. Now at work you have, also in an apartment you can just like not see someone, even if they're your next door neighbor, you can just like kind of avoid them. But at work you actually have to have interactions with people. But there's also rules governing interactions between people in the workplace. There's also the consequences to your job and that sort of stuff. So I really recommend not doing it. However, since guys are going to do it anyway, what I recommend you do at work is take your time. Okay, still be the strong alpha male character that is attractive to women and that gets you laid. Still do all those things, but take your time in terms of the open and in terms of the closed. By the way, to a lesser extent, this is my advice for gaming a small social circle. Like if you're in a class and you're going to see the same people over and over again, even if there's no work issue, or if you just happen to go to a certain place and you know you're going to see people over and over again. Basically, when that's the case, you don't have to open in awkward situations because the point of an open is just to start a conversation. Now, you'd like to start the conversation as well as possible, but the reason you open is because if you don't open, you're not going to talk to them. Now, if you work with someone or if you're going to see someone over and over again in a social group, that's no longer true. You're going to talk to them anyway. So in that case, sure, if it makes it just like falls in your lap, if it's perfect, then yeah, do the open. But don't try some crazy, weird open where you have to deal with like a-mogging a bunch of random guys who she's busy like doing work with, rather than waiting to just normally get to talk to her under normal circumstances. You don't have to do that, so don't. I recognize that the opens are just going to come to you more naturally, so only take natural opens, or only take more natural opens, or structure the situation so that you'll naturally get introduced to them, so you don't have to do that open, you don't have to make that commitment. You have the luxury in these situations of setting up a situation where you're starting out on equal ground rather than starting out as having to chase them, so take advantage of it. Also, it'll help you avoid getting that reputation of someone who opens a lot, which means like that player reputation, which in a work situation is really not a good thing to have, right? It actually can avoid you getting rejected as well, which again is, in that work context, actually matters a little bit. Now in the real world, by the way, in the real world with 7 billion people in it, rejection doesn't matter, so don't fucking care about that. But within the context of work or small social circle, it does matter. So do structure things to avoid the bad reactions. The other thing is on the close, right? Again, if you're going to see the person again anyway, you don't have to push as hard for a close. A lot of times in a set out at a bar, if you don't close right then, if you don't get a girl's number, at least you're never going to see her again. Like literally, you will never see her again for life. So you have to do whatever you can to get the number. In fact, I've done all kinds of crazy shit. I've stolen girls' like phones out of their pockets, like, and programmed my number in just to get it, because I knew they'd be feisty and reactive, and I know that ups the odds. Obviously, that sort of thing is not going to fly in a work context in any way, shape, or form. But even beyond like the awkwardness of getting numbers, you don't even have to pursue it because you're going to see them again. What you really want, the purpose of a number isn't as a prize. It's not like, hey, how do you like Ben apples? It's not that thing. The reason you get a number is to see the girl again. The reason you get the number is to facilitate taking that interest that you have to the next level. But if you're going to see her anyway, just focus on the interest. Just focus on getting her interested. Actually make her chase you. That's how it usually goes down in the real world, not in cold approach pickup. So take your time, build it patiently, just be amazing, make sure she sees you. Obviously, again, if the opportunity to close occurs, close. But don't be going out of your way to close, and don't force it, right? And also be again very circumspect with the whole office thing, that you don't create an issue. Now that don't close thing, taking it out of the office context and say like a small community or a small classroom, don't let the don't close thing take it to the level where you don't ask a girl to go grab a drink with you, or you don't actually push for a date too. What I'm saying is just don't push awkwardly. Just subtly suggest it, or just make it happen right then. Like, as opposed to just make it happen naturally right then. Like, you're at the end of a class, be like, hey, yeah, I'm walking home. Let's just go grab a bite and study together, just as a casual thing, rather than making a big deal about, oh, I need a phone number, or let's make a formal date. That's the type of thing I say when don't try so hard to close. Just don't do those awkward closes. You do need to close. You do need to lead as a man. You still need to show initiative in any context. So that'd be my advice there. But the biggest advice I'm going to give you, which I've reiterated a million times, and I'm going to reiterate again, is don't shit where you work, or don't shit where you eat. So in general, don't game at work unless there's an extremely, extremely good reason. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Okay, I said a girl. Alright, I'm getting, this is some repeat questions here. I'll give you, okay. What do you do when a girl suggests a place or event to meet up because she doesn't have anyone else to go with? I'd suggest going. It's a pretty simple answer to that one. A lot of guys ask me about whether they should take certain dates, or whether they should accept a girl's frame in setting up the date, or something like that. Ideally, yes, you should be leading. Ideally, yes, you should be getting the girl on your own turf. Ideally, you should be doing a date that can lead to sex. But that said, the single biggest thing you want to be thinking at all times is just get to the next step. Don't worry about getting all the way. Don't worry about, is this date going to go all the way to sex, all the way to a relationship, all the way to marriage. Just get it to the next step, and the next step usually is seeing her. So if you have an opportunity to see her and you for sure can do it, that's better than getting over the phone. You can get her to that optimal environment later over the phone. Also, don't worry about like the situation of the girl leading too much. Now, if a girl invites you to an event where you're going to be with a bunch of her friends, it's going to be awkward for you and it sounds like shit to go to, maybe in that case you have better things to do. But if it's the girl inviting you to go do something alone, typically I would just take it and just roll with it there, and then whatever other things you need to do, you can make happen after the fact. Once you're in person, you always have more leverage in person than you would if you were just over the phone. Let's see. Okay, what challenge did you have when you started in the game? Were you natural from the very beginning? For me, when I started in the game and throughout my entire learning curve in game, it's basically been the same obstacle over and over and over again, and that was failure to escalate, right? Failure to show a girl I had a penis, basically. So failure to take it to the next step, failure to make something happen. And so within that context, at first it was like failure to approach, failure to ask for a number, failure to kiss, failure to approach girls with groups, those sorts of things. I was the furthest thing from natural that you could possibly be at the very beginning. I was socially awkward. I had never had a girlfriend. I was not even good at talking to guys. Basically, when I was growing up, I was convinced by my father, which, like, good intentions. He just wanted me to be productive and, like, do other things like sports and academics and whatnot. But I was convinced that hanging out was, like, the biggest evil in the world, that was the way to ruin your life, was by hanging out. And so I was actually encouraged for 18 years to be antisocial. I was encouraged to view small talk as, like, satanically evil almost, like just awful, 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 terrible evil. And so that was a huge thing I had to get over. But what I did was I got to a point when I went to college where I basically decided that it was time to get this handled, and I just decided I was going to do it. And so what I did only two things well. Everything else, literally besides these two things, I did badly. Literally. But the two things I did well was I opened a lot, and I tried to close. So I would talk to every cute girl I would meet, period. If it was like if there was a cute girl in like the line for at the diner or whatever, or if there was a cute girl walking into the diner, I was creepy. I was a creepy stalker. I would like wander oddly over to the line, so I'd make sure that I'd end up next to her in the line. right? And then when I ended up next to her in the line, I'd say something. A lot of times it was lame, but I'd say something. I'd make something happen. And a lot of times it'd be just I'd say some random thing, she'd respond, and then it would get awkward, and she'd go back to doing whatever she was doing. But at least I'd said something. At least I'd tried, right? The other thing that I did was every time we'd parted, even if it was like, say for example, that same awkward interaction, I just said 2 words, she went back to her thing, and it totally was awkward. Then at the end of the lunch line, when we both parted ways, I'd be like, hey, it was really nice talking to you. What's your number? Even if it was a shitty set, I always asked for a number. Those are the 2 things I did. I always opened, and I always tried to close. Even though my closing was very weak, I wouldn't like close for sex. I wouldn't close for anything really risky or whatever, but I would try and close. And that's the big thing that I did. I was terrible at making conversation. I didn't tell interesting stories. I was not terribly funny. I was super nervous and shy and awkward, very introverted. But the things I did is I tried to open, I tried to close. And by doing that, I got a lot of reference experience. I got a lot of sets under my belt, and that's how I learned. Was just through getting that multitude of sets. So that was the big thing. That was what needed to happen. And so for me, it wasn't so much about that I was good at game or that I knew any techniques. In fact, most of the techniques I learned actually sucked and held me back. But the big thing was it was about that process of just learning and pushing myself and then getting good one way or another. I just forced myself to get good. I forced myself to have no excuse but to get good. Let's see. Okay, that one I answered. In addition to the last one, how do you get the willpower to go out solo? Man, the funny thing is, it was willpower for me. I mean, the first time I went to a mall, I walked around the mall for like 3 hours, and I never even approached a girl because I was so nervous about it. And so, yeah, I mean, that is a factor. The biggest thing is you just have to want it, and it's hard to teach wanting it. It really is hard to teach wanting it. What I will suggest, if you're having trouble with going out solo, if you're having trouble with doing those first approaches, if you're just trying to get started, give yourself excuses. Make it easy for yourself and accept the little things. I don't know if you guys have seen Tyler's like hard case newbie videos, where he talks about just recognize you suck, recognize that you haven't done the work to deserve a really great result yet, but just do something, and then take the positive out of anything you possibly can. Okay, so what I would recommend in terms of getting those first approaches out there, getting out there, is just take anything as a small victory. If you're super shy, just walk down the street and try and make eye contact and hold it with girls. And every time you actually hold eye contact, take that as a victory. Or the next thing is just say hi to girls. Just say hi to every girl you like as you walk down the street. And don't even worry if they say hi back. Just the fact that you said hi is a victory, right? Or go ask girls for directions, right? Just so you get used to the idea of it's okay to impose on someone's time, if that's the issue for you. So even though those are like really small steps, they're kind of like lame moves along the way. Just take them and do them and get the positives out of them. Whatever positives you get, enjoy them. Other things you can do is like you can even do like gimmicky lame openers. I know when I was first learning, I did this thing called the cologne opener, which is like go to a perfume store, I'd spray 2 different colognes on one on each wrist, and I would ask girls their opinion on the cologne. And typically what would happen is they'd give me their opinion on the cologne, and then they would leave. And it was a shitty set that had no chance of really going anywhere and whatever. But what did I do? I actually got used to just imposing on someone's time, starting a conversation, asking them, for a minute at a time. And usually they would at least smile, or they would at least be pleasant to me. And so I ingrained in my mind, in my psyche, that people are positive, people are nice. And then that helped me in the long run. And every now and again, every once in a while, just by doing enough of those, you do 20 of those, someone will actually just say some word other than cologne to you, and then you're in a conversation. And now you just latch onto that positive, enjoy it, embrace it, and take it for what it's worth, and just keep that learning process. I can't emphasize to you guys enough that game is a process. Wherever you're at, whether you're really good and are pulling almost every night, or whether you're a total newbie, game is a process. Okay, so embrace it. Embrace the process and realize that you're not trying to get to a destination. Recognize that wherever you're at is perfect. Wherever you're at is right where you're supposed to be at right now, and just grow it from there. There's plenty of time. I have been AMOG'd and lost girls to guys who were like must have been 65 or 70. And they just had decades in the game and were just really, really good. And so for all you guys, there's plenty of time for you. There's plenty of time if you get good to have all the girls that you want in your life. There's nothing holding you back as long as you do the process. On the flip side, no matter how good you are, if you're not willing to do the process, the game will pass you by. New concepts will come out, girls will get more savvy, guys will get more savvy, ideas are being shared very rapidly now. However good you are, other people are getting better, and if you're not, you will be left behind. So it's not, and it's never going to be, about how good you are in this moment. It's always going to be about the process. Are you constantly improving yourself? Are you becoming more self-amusing? Are you reading and learning and becoming a better person? Are you going out there and getting that calibration? Are you improving your game? Are you improving your reaction time? All those sorts of things. That's always going to be the important part. So I'd say focus there and recognize that just going out in and of itself is a victory. The other thing in terms of willpower, a lot of times lack of willpower is lack of planning or lack of scheduling. So if you really want to go out on your own, actually, I don't know if you have like a calendar for work or something like that, but actually put it in your work calendar. Actually physically schedule the time. Don't just figure I'll get to it eventually. Don't just figure, oh yeah, I'll do, some sets when it's convenient for me when I get around to it. Actually schedule it in your calendar. Actually schedule that at, like Thursday night at like 10 p.m. I'm out. And that's it. And actually protect that. Protect that the same way you'd protect like a meeting with like your biggest client at work or with like a get together with your best friend. Actually protect that and make it sacred and force yourself to do it. And force yourself to do it a few times, right? But by actually scheduling it rather than just hoping and wishing to plan it, you'll actually get it done. The things you schedule, you do. The things you don't, you don't. And eventually you get to the point where you don't have to schedule it because it'll either be fun for you or natural for you. But along the lines of getting it going, schedule it. Make it happen. Don't accept no for an answer. It's a big thing. Just have that consistency to yourself where you won't let it go. Let's see what we got here. All right. I see myself as a lone wolf. What value is there in finding a quality wing? Let me see this. Hang on, where'd this go? So excuses, avoidance, being antisocial. Okay. So what are wings good for and what are wings not good for? Wings are good mostly for logistics. They're good for actually a couple different things. They're good for helping with logistics first and foremost. If you're dealing with two girls and you're by yourself, it's going to be a royal pain in the ass. If you're dealing with two girls and you have a decent wing, that's the easiest set in the world to pull. And so certain opportunities, having a wingman makes all the difference in the world. So that's number one. Also, say it's even more girls, say it's like 4 or 5 girls, 3 girls even, it's a lot easier to talk to your girl if your wing can go talk to the other one. So the biggest point of having a wingman and the reason why winging existed in the first place is for occupying the friends so that you can do your thing a little better. So it becomes a tool. It becomes sort of like a strategic tool. It's like setting a pick in basketball. You're essentially setting a pick on the friends so that you can talk to the girl you're interested in. So that's the most technical version of what a wing is. But the other thing that a wing is great for is for pushing you and pumping your state, right? It makes the night more fun for a lot of guys if you have someone who you can go out with that you can share experiences with. If you get blown out, like some brutal blowout, and you have a wingman to just look over like, oh my God, really? Did that just happen? And like to sort of commiserate and enjoy the experience together, it makes it more fun, more interesting for you. So that's a big part of it. And then the other thing is pushing yourself, right? Those times when you know there's a hot girl and you want to push it, oh my God, she's hot. And then you just don't do anything about it because you're out alone and no one's forcing you to. The other great thing about having a wing is you have that compliance level where there's someone who's like, dude, don't be a bitch, go do it, let's hit it up, let's go try something. So having that motivation and that someone to push you is also a huge part of having a wing. And then lastly, the other way you can use a wing, even with one girl, is to bring the girl over to him and make it your party, right? If you bring the girl into your party, it's more fun than if it's just you and her talking. It conveys you as a cool social guy. It puts it naturally in a situation where she's going to be chasing you. If it's you and your friend and her talking, she's going to be chasing the conversation. She's going to be the less cool one in the interaction, so it's automatic value for you. So there are a lot of really cool and interesting ways to use a wingman. That said, the one thing I will say about going out solo, at least for me personally, when I go out with wingmen, a lot of times it's easy for me to make excuses. So it's easy for me to make the excuse that some girl's not quite hot enough, for example. That's an excuse I'll make with wingmen a lot. Like, say there's a girl that's like a 7'5" or an 8, like totally hot girl, I would love to sleep with her. Definitely should talk to her. There's no excuse for not talking to her. But I'm with the wingman and I'm like, oh, well, I'm having fun here. We're just doing our thing. Let's wait for a hotter girl. Or I'll be like, oh, I don't want to get blown out in front of my friends. So, we'll just do whatever and just take it easier. We'll get to it eventually. That sort of thing. So don't let it be an excuse for you. Some guys, when they go out alone, they actually find that they do more approaches because there's just nothing else to do. There are no distractions. And for some guys, if they go out to do an approach and they're by themselves and then they just don't they don't approach, they feel super lame about it. And so that very fact of feeling lame actually can be a good thing because it can be the motivator that gets you approaching. So I will say something for both. The wings are very useful in terms of managing logistics and sort of keeping your state up, making it fun. But I've always said going out solo is good for the soul. And I think that I will say two things. Nobody's ever gotten great at the game, like truly, truly, truly great, without someone to share it with that I've seen. Without some sort of like social circle or social support system built up in the game that keeps them going out, keeps them pushing themselves, keeps them from plateauing. But on the same end, and this is interesting, paradoxically with what I just said, I don't know anybody who's ever gotten truly, truly great at the game without at some point going out on their own, without at some point having to push through the fact that I am a man, I stand on my own 2 feet, I don't need anybody to push me, and I'm going to go after what I want. Right? I'm not going to edit who I go out for. That's the other thing is when I go out alone, I will talk to the 7s, whereas when I will go out with my wings, a lot of times they're like, oh, no, she's not hot enough, right? And number one, she probably is hot enough. Number two, even if she's not hot enough, it's still building momentum. It's still making your night better, still building skill set. So that's super, super important to do, even if not for that particular girl. It's important to build your night and get started and follow the process. And sometimes that can be easier to do alone because you have nothing to do except follow the process. So those are my thoughts on winging and not winging, I guess. Yeah, my opening rate is about half with a wingman. Yeah, that's me too. I walk around the club all night and just wait and wait. Oh, the other issue with a wingman is that sometimes a wingman will, when you're with a wingman, say it's like the two of you, you'll be in 2-set mode. You'll be in this mode where you only want to talk to girls in 2 sets because you want a hot girl for your wingman, as opposed to just doing your own thing. A lot of times I find that even when I have a wingman, the best that we do together isn't where we hunt together, so to speak. It's where we do our own sets, and then just kind of keep in touch with each other. And then when something happens to develop, then we come together and make it work, as opposed to being like joined at the hip, where you can't do anything without your wing, or when there's like some super hot girl that you'd love to talk to, but her friend's ugly, she's like, oh, no, we'll look for a different set. That's such a lame excuse. Such a lame excuse. On top of which, if your wingman's good, or if you're good to him, you guys should occasionally jump on a grenade for each other. That's an important part of wingman too, right? In fact, really, really good wingmen, honestly, should be getting laid like half the time, because they should be taking the grenade for their other wing a lot of the time. Oh, the other interesting thing, this is just a random thing I'll throw out to you guys to try out. Sometime, there's this sort of like too many chefs spoil the broth idea in terms of winging, but what I think is fun to do, and what I've had really good results with some of the other RSD instructors, is to game 2 guys on 1 girl, and actually do it like you're competing for the girl. Do it like you're doing an AMOG battle, because then what happens in the girl's mind, it's a really interesting thing. If one guy is talking to a girl, the question in her mind is, am I going to go home with him? But if 2 guys are talking to a girl, the question isn't, am I going to go home with them? It somehow subtly shifts to, which one am I going to go home with? Which is really interesting and really powerful. But by making it a direct competition, yes, someone's going to be the loser, but there's also a really, really good there's a really good chance that someone becomes the winner by virtue of like almost default. So that's a fun thing to do with your wingman. So definitely try that out as well. And I've had really good results with that. I've done that actually with Julian a few times, and he and I are really good on that because his game is so polarizing and so obnoxious that it gets really big responses. But then the girls don't trust him at all; like they have zero trust in him. and then I'm, the cool guy who's not trying as hard, but then like I can actually build that trust. So when he blows it out, when he gets into a situation where he would need to apologize because he's gone too far, and maybe he's destroyed his ability to apologize even because he went too far, I can still go in and apologize. I can bring them back and get it back on. So the two of us actually work really well together. We've done some really amazing stuff together. So yeah, it's definitely something to do. Let's see. After I warm up with bed in the field and start opening, introducing myself without trying, being united, I always doubt myself and confused what to do. Difficult actions. So this guy just talks about building momentum. The big thing with building momentum is just to do it. Realize that if you start out and get a positive reaction, that's great and it'll build your night, but also realize that getting a negative reaction also builds your night, right? It's uncanny actually, how many times the step that I end up pulling is right after my worst rejection of the night. It's crazy how often that happens, because what happens is, is that bad set, that crazy bad set gets me in a very emotional state. It gets my blood up, so to speak. And by making me angry like that, it makes it very easy for me to express some form of emotion towards the next girl I talk to. So I had a night in Vegas. It was actually a long time ago, but it's a good example of this concept, where I was actually doing really poorly. I was getting blown out a lot. At some point, I'll talk to you guys. I actually usually have trouble in Vegas, ironically, because my game is very boyfriendy. So I pull a lot in a lot of other cities very easily, because girls literally fall in love with me on the first night. But in Vegas, it's weird because I'm a little bit too much like the guy they fall in love with, and it actually kind of turns them off because they want the one-night stand thing. So typically when I go to Vegas, my first couple nights, I'm kind of shitty, because I'll get all these girls falling head over heels for me, but then just not going home with me and trying to be oh no, I'm here for a couple days, give me a call. Whereas we all know that phone numbers in Vegas are worthless. So we get these girls trying to be my girlfriend when I met them in Vegas, which is fucking weird. So I get that a lot the first couple days, and then I get pissed the next couple days and just I know it blow through every set and piss everybody off, and then sometimes I get laid, sometimes I don't, and then after that I'm super calibrated and just pull every single night. But so anyway, that's how it goes for me in Vegas, just because of my game. Kind of off topic. But so anyway, I was in Vegas a while back, and I was talking to this girl, and she actually really liked me, but then her friend just came out of nowhere and just literally physically almost shoved me in the pool at excess. I literally almost went splash in the pool, because this fucking bitch who had no idea what was going on, her friend liked me. He's she doesn't like you, fuck off, and literally shoved me in the pool and dragged her friend away. And I was no, this is not happening. You are not that special just because you have a vagina. Fuck that. And so I went over and just yelled at her and told her to get the fuck out of the club, and told her she's a fucking, she's a fun-hating piece of shit and she didn't belong here, go the fuck home, that kind of thing. Just so livid. That she could literally think it's okay on any level to treat a human being that way. And then on top of the fact she was wrong, right? She's if she doesn't like you, whatever, when her friend clearly did like me, which probably is why she did it, actually. But it pissed me off so much. So I chewed her out, and the very next set that I opened, you fucking come here, you're cute. She just screamed at her, and she was terrified. But then once I apologized, because I had gone in so strong, because I had that strong emotion, it had really grabbed her attention, and then I was able to push through and get the good result and take her home. So recognize when you're in this momentum building process that you're not building momentum to try and get a good result. Yes, it does happen that eventually once a girl makes out with you, or once a girl really likes you, that will help your state and that will help your game and your night. But recognize also the extreme negatives help your night as well. Okay? The other thing that you can do to make building momentum better, or to make it work better, is to burn your sets to the ground. When you go in and you go say hi and get a light rejection, you kind of turn away like it showed, that's not going to build momentum for you. It's not. What builds momentum are your sets that either go really well or really badly. The lame half-ass sets don't really do it. And so what you need to do is you need to either get a girl on hard or to blow off hard. So the way to build momentum is to burn the sets to the ground. When you know that thing that girls do, oh, it was nice meeting you, and they put out, I'm trying to put my hand on the screen, or they hold out their hand, it was nice meeting you, and they give you their hand-to-hand shake. Don't deal with that. It was nice to meet you. Fuck that. You should never get it was nice to meet you. To me, that's the biggest insult in game. The biggest insult in game if a girl goes, oh, it was nice meeting you. Fuck that. Don't ever have a set where you get that. Push it to the point where they either decide they love you and they're on, or push it to the point where they go, fuck off, leave now, what the hell. And if you do that, you're going to get either the strong positive that builds your state, or you're going to get the strong negative that proves to you you're in a safe environment, and no matter what happens, it's going to be okay. And those are the two things that build state. Those are the experiences you want to have. So what I recommend you doing in your state building practice is burn your sets to the ground, right? Burn them to the ground in a funny way. Don't get like kicked out of the club or anything like that. But burn them to the ground. Don't just let it be a soft rejection. Don't reject. I call that rejecting yourself. Actually, don't reject yourself. Make this is like old school Gunwich method. Make the hoe say no. Make her say a strong no. All right. Don't let it be a light, easy one like that. Let's see. How do I find different cities? London seems hardcore. Different cities are interesting. I would say that mostly it's the same everywhere you go, mostly. But there are certainly a little bit different vibes in different cities. Big one for me has been Los Angeles and Boston. Have been kind of different for me, whereas Los Angeles is sort of a very superficial city, where it's all about like how you look, who you know, where you can get into access, especially Hollywood, which is where I got a lot. It's a bit of a different vibe, and the girls are hotter. Whereas in Boston, the girls are not as hot, but it's much more of like almost like a family, like wholesome vibe in a weird way. Like in LA, I think just as many girls have boyfriends in LA as in Boston, or here's the thing, they don't have boyfriends, they have guys they're sleeping with. Right, so that's the difference. It's a different culture, right? In LA, girls never say, I have a boyfriend. They'd be like, I'm seeing someone, or I'm kind of like taken, or something like that, right? Whereas in Boston, people are very like, they latch on to this like idea of boyfriend, girlfriend, and they're very like closed off about it. And also the guys in Boston are much more like, they don't have any game to speak of compared to LA guys, but they're very willing to like protect what's theirs. So it becomes much more like physical and dominant. So you get this boyfriend objection a lot more. And so in Boston, what I've noticed, but it's not as high a value, right? It's not a city where the social value is as high. You're not talking about celebrities and like models and people that, in terms of social value, put like months of effort into getting into a particular club. So it's a little different. So what I found actually in Boston, it works better to go more conversation. It works better to be almost more of like a nice guy. And then become more of an asshole later, or let your like alpha values come through later on. Whereas in LA, almost always the solution is just bang them over the head with value. Just fucking like just put a drum on their head and just bang that value into them. And so that's it's a bit of a difference, but it's a calibration difference, right? It's basically, it's not like the game fundamentally changed. It's like in LA you treat more girls like they're about a point higher on the scale and like they're vapid. Whereas in Boston you treat girls like they're a little lower self-esteem and like they need a little bit more comfort for the most part. But don't overdo that. Like the hot girls in any city are still getting treated like hot girls. They still are very entitled. They still need that value, and so don't over-calibrate. So what I think actually that's probably the biggest difference with being in a smaller city is because you find the tens more rarely, it's a little tougher to adjust your nice sweet game back up to like turbo hottie game. So it's a bigger adjustment there. But I would say in general the game's the same, and it's an instant calibration issue. Like it's going to change the way that you open a little bit, like whether you open hard on value or whether you open a little more casual. So it'll change like the first 15 seconds of the approach, and you'll calibrate to that very quickly when you go to a new city, because you'll see what works and you'll see what doesn't. But then once you're in the set, don't try and interact with the idea of the city, or don't try and interact with like, this is a Boston girl, this is an LA girl. Just interact with what the girl's actually giving you, because that's the better feedback. The more important data is what's actually going on in the set, not what like the stereotypes would tell you. So in terms of any adjustment to a city, that should occur before the set, maybe in what you wear, maybe in whether you're going to approach like a little bit more laid back and chill, or whether you're going to approach like very biting it in your face and like fuck you dog. But once you're in the set, it really shouldn't matter. Girls are pretty much girls anywhere. The one difference from certain cities is a language barrier, and if you get language barrier, the way to deal with that is lead a lot, like replace conversation with physical leading, especially because, at least for me, I'm witty in my game. I like to use cleverness and use my vocals to build attraction. And if the girl doesn't speak English, that's really hard to do. A lot of girls in foreign countries, they'll speak English well enough to communicate, but they won't speak English well enough to like flirt. So if you flirt with them, they'll actually get really offended. I know I was in Amsterdam a few years ago, and they speak English there. They actually speak very good English compared to almost anywhere. But for whatever reason, I guess because the accent's different or because whatever they're not used to, certain people that I talked to there didn't get sarcasm. Like they didn't understand flirting in game, like the girls so much. And so certain times it worked, but a couple times with the girls, I'd be like, oh my God, you're trouble, you're a bad girl or something like that. And they would actually think I literally meant it. And some girl that really, really liked me, that I was just saying this is a cute little thing, would get seriously offended and like almost start to cry. And if that happens in Amsterdam, where they actually do speak English, you can only imagine in places like maybe like Italy or France or Eastern Europe or something where the English isn't as good. And so what I recommend in those cases is to be more nice verbally, but then to keep the fire of the interaction up, the push-pull of the interaction through what you do physically, by being either physically pushing away or by just physically leading a lot and being extremely dominant. So you make sure that you're showing intent rather than just getting into chit-chat and logical conversation. Because if someone doesn't speak English, the natural conversation you're going to be able to have with them is probably going to be logical. So recognize that, and recognize you may need to use your nonverbal channels a little more strongly in those particular cases. But overall, I'd say girls in one location are more similar than different to girls in another location, so don't over-calibrate, and don't try and get it in your head. Also, don't let your city be an excuse. Every single city I go to, guys think that their city is the worst city for game, or the hardest city for game, but it's not true, because obviously they can't all be the worst. Yeah, don't let it be an excuse. Don't let it be like that it's okay. I mean, regardless, if it's hard or if it's not hard, who cares? You just do it. You just go through the process, put yourself through it, and get the best you can out of it. Let's see. Alright, we have about 5 more minutes. I think I'll take like maybe one more question, and then I'll have you guys, if you want, unmute yourselves, and you can just like kind of just talk a bit and get to know if you have any particular things or thoughts right at the end here. But I'll try and flip through and find one more question here real fast. How do you show you have a dick? Sure. So what you do is you take your trousers, you unzip them, and the way that you show you have a dick, it's subtle. Basically what you do is you avoid conversational topics that are too platonic that they could have with their gay best friend. You avoid conversational topics you're not interested in. That's one of the biggest things. Conversational topics you're not interested in should be avoided. If she starts talking about her shoes or her handbag or some little gossipy thing you don't care about, be willing to interrupt that. Be willing to show that you're clear that you have intention. Now, that's not technically showing you have a dick, but it is showing that you're a strong man with purpose, which is very, very simple. The other ways that you show you have a dick, touch the girl. Actually touch her. Don't let yourself have a conversation where you go 15 minutes without touching a girl. Just a quick reminder for any of you guys that did Tyler Hot Seat. You guys remember the 3 videos he shows at the start, where the first one he's not touching the girl, he's just kind of standing in the distance, and even though it's going well, you just can tell he's not going to sleep with her. And then by the third one, he's like, mugs the girl out of the cab and just basically physically picks her up. That's the difference of getting physical, right? You can run a perfectly good set that the girl's into you enough, but if you don't get physical, there's just not that same level of commitment, that same level of like sort of like pop and punch, and like it's just not as strong. It's just not as strong, because sex is a physical thing. So you need to get physical. That's another way you show that you have a dick. The last way that you show you have a dick is be willing to talk about it. Be willing to talk about sex. Be willing to bring up the concept of sex, right? Like if a girl says something boring, sometimes I'll say to her, I'll be like, wow, that was really fucking boring. I bet you're a starfish in bed. Stuff like that. Like just bring up the concept of sex. Or the other line that I like, I actually put this on my Twitter recently, you're too politically correct to be good in bed. That sort of thing, you just mention that to them. Or even like the obnoxious, like Julian used to do, is constantly say that's what she said, like 20,000 times a conversation. But just the idea of saying that's what she said, it's showing that you're thinking in a sexual way, right? It's not that that's what she said is the cleverest joke or anything, it's pretty lame. But at least you're showing that you're thinking in a sexual way, you're taking things sexually, right? The other thing is, like, eye contact is good, slowing down your voice is good, those things help. But the biggest thing is taking charge, taking initiative, and not being ashamed. Not being ashamed of your desires as a man. Recognize that you like sex, you are a man, and it's okay for men to like sex. In fact, you're supposed to like sex. Anything else would be weird. So, don't let that happen. Be a man, like sex, and go with it as such. So that's kind of how you show you have a penis. Alright, with that said, I'm going to let you guys unmute yourselves, and go ahead and, if you guys have any last thoughts, last questions, things you want to say, etc. We're going to wrap up. We actually went like way over. We went for like an hour and a half. Sorry guys for the tardiness in starting the video. Hopefully I won't have any issues like this again, since I know how to actually run the video, and I've actually done it with a group of people as opposed to just one now. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the questions, and hopefully it's been good for you. And if you guys have any last things you want to do verbally, I'll stay online for a few more minutes. The conference may actually end at either 5 or 5:15, so that'll be either 3 minutes or 18 minutes. So it may be that I can't even stay online past that, but I'll stay online for as long as I can, and feel questions, talk to anybody who wants to just chat after, okay? So as far as the formal question answering, that's it. Feel free to talk. I guess talking amongst yourselves might be a little bit of a hassle with the noise, but if anybody has like last comments or a last question really, really nagging at you that you really want to get answered, feel free to ask it. All right? And that'll be it as far as answering the chat questions.
I'd love to know how to. Alright, I had sex with this girl that I used to be friends with, and now she just texts me all the time and sends me voicemails. I want to be nice. I want to be nice about it. I want to be polite, but I want to tell her that it's kind of annoying.
Well, first of all, it's a high quality problem many guys would like to have. So she was your friend first, and then you had sex like one time or whatever, and then you're just trying to get her to like chill out.
Right.
How good of friends are you? Can you lie to her? Like, can
I can easily lie to her.
Can you just tell her that like you're seeing someone or something? Just be like, hey, look, I'm sorry, this is awkward. I've been kind of seeing someone recently, but I really value our friendship and I want to like stay in touch. But just like, please don't this much, or please just realize this is where I'm at.
That one wouldn't work because I told her the reasons that I don't want to have a relationship with her is because I'm trying to see, talk to a bunch of other girls.
Right, so you already are not that friend.
Right.
In that case, I would basically just, it's tough. It's tough. You're gonna have to like break it to her gently. The thing that, do you still hang out with her?
Yeah, she actually had a conversation with me about it. I tried to be cool about it, but she started crying, and I felt bad. But
have you tried just hanging out and not having sex? Like just hang out and just don't get physical, and so does that work, or does she get like upset with that as well? She's
just constantly like slightly irritated with me, and you could tell.
Yeah. I'd say just deal with it the best you can. Time is the best healer for that sort of thing. Typically it'll go away over time. People tend to be very emotionally hurt right after these sorts of things, but if you give it time and you're just like a nice and genuine person, then typically over time will be okay. Also just emphasize to her how much that you do value her friendship, and recognize that it probably will be awkward in the short run. That's what happens. Sorry. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you. It's going to be awkward. You're not going to have an awkward situation with that. But that doesn't mean you can't keep her as a friend, and it doesn't mean that you would have to like have sex with her. You can definitely get what you want, but just recognize there will be a transitional process and it won't be pleasant.
Alright, perfect.
Cool.
I've got another question. When I've got bad nights, I think it's it's another night where I'll sit it out to the bitter end and practice my skill. And when I've got good nights, I think it's just flowing, and I know I will get the result. So what's your opinion on this mindset?
Which one? The good night mindset or the bad night mindset?
Yeah, both.
Both? I mean, I think I think it should be a little bit, I think the true mindset should be a little bit of both mixed in. First of all, if you have the bad mindset and you're willing to just keep hitting it and keep hitting, going to the bitter end, that's a great mindset to have. In the sense that it'll keep you going. But also at the same time, if you are getting to like make it happen, get it to the bitter end, you're actually getting in the way of like your own flow, right? You're getting in the way of having fun and getting in state.
Yeah.
So you don't want to create the situation where you are diffusing the bomb. On the flip side, if you're having that night where things are going well and you're like, it will just happen, a lot of times it will just happen, but also recognize that sometimes that allows you to get lazy or complacent. So like, have you ever had those nights when you get a bunch of girls that are into you and then you don't like zone in and choose one, or you don't like, like actually make the logistics happen, then at the end of the night everybody's leaving and now nothing happens because you didn't take initiative and didn't force it to happen. So you need to be willing to force it in those nights as well. The big thing I would tell you is both of your mindsets are good, first of all. Like, they're both good mindsets, but you should probably, paradoxically, almost have both of them at once, if that makes sense. You should have the mindset that you're going to take the action and burn it to the bitter end all the time, even when it's going well. Even when it's going well, you should have in the back of your mind the knowledge that you'll burn it to the bitter end. And even when it's going badly, you should have the knowledge that things will be okay. And even if things aren't okay that night, because you're going through the process, things will be okay in the long run. So it's a little bit zen, but try and keep both. I think they're both good attitudes, but really you should have your good night and your bad night. Almost like, again, it's almost like you'd have to be a Buddhist monk to pull this off, but they shouldn't feel different. They should feel the same to you. They should feel kind of all like it's one big step in the process. When I was a professional poker player, there was one phrase that they always said, which is that so you sit down and play poker for an hour and you either win or lose. You sit down and play poker another hour, you either win or lose. And then people get all caught up in, I won this session, I didn't win this session, I'm down 2,000 today, I'm up 5,000 today, whatever. But what you should realize is that what it really is, it's one long session of poker that lasts your whole life. Even if you break it up into 1 hour here, 1 hour there, or tonight is Thursday night, the next night Saturday night, it's one long session of game that lasts your entire life. And recognize that in that session of game, you're going to do thousands and thousands of approaches, right? And so you truly should be completely outcome independent. Because just because you have like a bad Thursday night doesn't mean you're going to have like a bad Friday night or a bad Saturday night, or that one affects the other. And it's all randomness. It's all random variance. So truly recognize that a bad, in a certain sense, a bad night doesn't exist and a good night doesn't exist. It's just there's this period. It's just this one little moment in the longer game that actually does exist. So try and have both at once, and try and not get into a very different mindset on your good nights versus your bad nights. Try and be really, really steady in terms of how you view it. Try and take like a long-term approach to it. Take the approach that I'm in game not for tonight, but for 10 years. And if you're in game for 10 years, then a good night or a bad night doesn't really affect you quite as much. Does that make sense? But I do think that your mindsets actually are good. I think that your minds, like, in a vacuum, your mindsets are very, very good. The fact that you're going to push it to the bitter end when it's not going well, and the fact that you're going to like enjoy the experience and let it flow when you are going well, I think that's a very healthy mindset. I think it's very effective. I'm just trying to tell you, because it sounds like you already kind of have it together, like you're already probably doing really well. I'm just trying to tell you how to like take it to that next little tiny tweak to make it even better, which is have a little bit of the bad night mindset in your good nights and a little bit of the good night mindset in your bad nights, because they're both healthy things to have. Does that make sense? So it's a very nitpicky thing. But I would add that to what you're already doing if you can. Just to add that just a little extra bit of outcome independence. But yeah, no, it sounds like a great way to look at game overall.
Cool, thanks, man.
No problem.
Todd, just to put a foundation on what you said today, right? Can you give us an overview on your current basic model of the game?
My current basic model of the game is, as I saw that question, and I figured that'd be a really long question to answer. I'll give you a short answer to it, or the best I can quickly. Basically, my current model of the game is, I like to think that I'm cooler than the girls, that I've worked on myself enough that I am really the best decision a girl can make. And for any of you who haven't done this, it's an exercise I've recommended a million times. But sit down sometime and do a quick list of 10 reasons why you're the best decision a girl could make. It's a really healthy exercise to do, so you know where your value comes from and what you really have. So that's the first premise of my game, is I have very legitimate value that I can justify and back up. So that's where my inner game comes from, is the fact that I've put all this time working into myself and I'm truly offering value. In the same way that if I was walking up to someone, presenting them a check for like $1 million, I literally believe that that's the opportunity I'm presenting them with if I walk up to them. So that's why I'm able to walk up with confidence, and that's why I'm able to, when someone gives me shit or blows me off, I can be very persistent without being reactive, because on the one hand, I think they're an idiot for doing it, and on the other hand, I know that I'm helping them. So I know that even though I'm being obnoxious or I'm like invading their privacy or their space or doing something they don't want, I still am providing some value to them, okay? Then with that in mind, I also recognize that someone's reaction to me is not going to be a reaction to me. It's a reaction to the game I put out there, so I don't take it personally. Right? If I walk up to a set and get a rejection, it's not like they rejected me as a person. They rejected 30 seconds of conversation from me, and that's it. So it's not a big deal. It doesn't really, really matter. So that's another big part of it. And then I recognize that I'm in for a dance. I recognize that a pickup is a process. I can't expect to just walk up to someone and have them love me because I walked up to them. I have to go through the process. I have to go through the process of being self-amusing and showing them my qualities. Just having them isn't enough. There's this is from poker. It works in any sport, right? It's not enough just to be a good player of that sport. You have to actually play well if you want to win the game. Like if you're like Roger Federer, you show up at a tennis tournament, you're just like, oh, I'm Roger Federer, I'm #1 in the world, so I'm going to win. No, you have to actually go out there and play well. You have to actually like think during the match. You have to actually get your serves in the court. You know, you have to actually make your shots. And so recognize that you're going to have to execute. No matter how good you get, you're never above the process. You always have to execute. So that's the other understanding. In terms of what I'm actually thinking when I'm in this set, I'm thinking about two things. I'm thinking about value and comfort, like where am I in terms of value and comfort. Usually my assumption is that I'm high value and need comfort because of my previous assumptions, which is that I am this high value guy, and because that's my experience if I do a good open. But I also recognize that it's my job to provide the initiative for the conversation. It's my job to assume the burden of making something happen in the first 3 minutes. I can't just walk and be like, I'm here, now game me. Right? It doesn't work like that. I have to do the proper things in the first 3 minutes in order to earn it. I have to go in and use a loud voice and be dominant. I have to go have a smile on my face if possible, or at least, you know, some form of compelling expression as opposed to just like bland bored. You can be angry too, whatever expression works for you. But you have to be bringing something to the table. You have to like take the initiative that if the conversation dies in the first 15 seconds, you're gonna have to keep pumping it through. I've used the metaphor of like starting a lawnmower where you pull the cord and it just buh and dies. You pull it again, buh and dies, and eventually you pull the cord and it goes. You have to realize that a set very likely will be like that. So you have to take the initiative and make that happen. But then beyond that, it's my view that I just need to do me, right? I need to just do me. I put my time in. I am however good I am now, which thankfully after 12 years is pretty decent. But even if I was just beginning and I could go back and give myself this mindset, I just say, look, I'm as good as I am now. However good I am, I'm not going to worry about whether I have perfect game or whether I don't, whether I have good skills or I don't, whether I have a perfect line for this situation. I'm just going to go in and do me as best as I possibly can and make sure that I'm pushing it forward and trying to escalate. Those are the two things, right? It's like be cool and escalate. And recognize that it may not always go well. Also recognize that you do want to make it fun for yourself, because doing the right thing with the wrong soul or with the wrong intention behind it is worse than doing the wrong thing in the right way or with the right intention behind it. So get the intention right. And the intention is don't try and make it work. Don't try and defuse a bomb. Don't try and figure out the proper thing to say. Try and make it amazing. Think to yourself that you're trying to make an interaction that is more fun for you and for her than any interaction that's ever existed before. So just go in and try and have it be that much fun. Try and make it epic rather than making it work. Okay, so those are the kind of things that are going through my head right now. Those are, and I'm not going to say that's the whole basic model of game, but that's what I'm actually thinking during a set. During a set, those are the things I'm thinking. I'm thinking, go in. I am offering value. I'm really providing something to the situation. I'm going to do me, and I'm going to make it epic, and I'm going to escalate. That's all I'm really thinking. And then I'm calibrated to, if things don't seem to be going well, I'm calibrated enough to say, is this a lack of value or is it a lack of comfort, and then to adjust, right? But I go in with the assumption it's going to go well. I don't go in calibrating and trying to like start out diffusing things. That's just damage control. All the thinking I do in set is damage control. Mostly it's I go in, have fun, escalate, and then think if necessary. Think if she forces you to. But mostly just be natural and be real. I don't know if that answers all of your question. I kind of diverted from what is the model of game to what do I think in set. Which I think is a similar type of question and a little easier to answer. In terms of a brief on what really is the model of game, the model of game to me is understand what she would want from evolution, understand that she wants a high-value guy who she can actually keep around, and then try and be that guy. And that's conveyed through it's conveyed obliquely through being social, because every word you say, every action you take, it says something about what your life history has been. If you walk into a situation where you could be rejected in a way that allows that rejection, or that is loud and opens yourself to it, then you're conveying that when you've done that in the past, you've had a good response. So you're conveying value through assuming value. You're conveying value through being willing to take a risk. And there's a lot of these other little subtle things, but basically you're acting like essentially you're an entitled person. You're acting like you're someone who has always had good things in their life and who is opening up and trying to share those good things with someone else. I don't know, you can weigh in and see if that answered your question or not. I'm not exactly sure if I was on topic or if I was all over the place, but if you have a follow-up, I'm more than willing to take it.
Yeah, it pretty much answered what I
Cool.
wanted.
Awesome.
Is this recorded?
Yes, it should be. I am recording it right now. Hopefully we won't have any technical glitches on that. If we have any issues with the recording, I also have a camera, so I'll go back and re-answer the questions the best as I can and put that out as a video as well. But it is recording currently, so as of right now, yes, recording 1 hour and 47 minutes and 44 seconds.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. And then I have someone here said, am I going to answer the questions posted on the Inner Circle webinar page? Yeah, I plan on answering those. First of all, a lot of those were actually asked during this, but those that weren't asked, I'm thinking about using them for in my next video, either as part of the pre-webinar video, or perhaps I'll even do it in text. But yeah, I'll try and get answers to those. Ideally, I'll try and answer them in a video format down the road. All right, any last questions? I feel like we get kicked off here in like a minute or so, but any last ditch things before I go?
I've
Yeah.
got a quick question.
Sure.
How do you get from kiss clothes to actually getting the girl out of the club and back home? Have you got any quick advice for that?
Yeah, first of all, ironically, sometimes if it's really on, the kiss clothes can actually hurt you in that. It depends. Sometimes the kiss close builds comfort and builds that connection and that like logical compliance where she knows she's with you, and that can make it easier to get her home. In a certain sense also, by kiss closing her, you make it feel like if she comes home with you, it's for sex, which can actually make the getting her home harder. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But in terms of how to actually take her home, the biggest thing to do is just lead. Jeffy has this thing where he says he just grab a girl by the home and he goes, "Sco." He says it's not even let's go, it's "Sco." Right? He's just so assumed that he won't even say the words. So that's the first line of resistance is just like assume it and go with it. Then if that's not working or you don't feel like that would be proper, right? So the first part of getting home is just to ask, right? Now beyond that, if that's not working, then what you start doing is building her state, but also giving her excuses, giving her plausible deniability and excuses, And also, rather than trying to go all the way from the club to your house in one step, try and just get to the next step, right? Try and get her out in like the front of the club, right? Or try and move her, even start to a different part of the club. If it's a loud part of the club, like, hey, let's go talk over here somewhere quiet, or hey, come sit down with me, right? That's actually part of the pull. Like, come sit down with me is the first part of the pull, right? Or something along those lines. So do that one, or instead of saying, let's go to my place, which, by the way, never say that, but instead of trying to get her all the way back to your place, just be like, hey, let's go grab, there's a place for a bite, like, right on this corner. Just grab her and, like, walk to that corner and grab food with her and chill out and get to know her in a quieter environment rather than the club. Now you've been in two places, you've built more comfort. She left the club with you. That's huge. So just focus on the next step and the next step and the next step rather than trying to do the whole thing all at once. Also, there's a huge amount of power to just walking out the door with a girl of a club. A lot of times, this is really weird, but a lot of times you can pull a girl. Like, you could talk to a girl for like an hour and then not have her leave the club with you, and then there's no connection, no pull. Conversely, you can talk to a girl for 2 minutes right as she happens to be walking out of the club, and if you just happen to be the person walking next to her when she walks out of the club, a lot of times that'll become a pull. So just getting that, like, step out of the club with her, even if it's just, like, to go, like, on the excuse of let's go grab a cigarette or let's go check something out, and then you can just, like, once you're outside, then take it to the next step. That's actually really, really useful. Okay, cool. Yeah, but just take it one step at a time, and don't be afraid to lie a little bit or exaggerate a little bit, and don't be afraid to be a little bit of a weasel. Like, don't be afraid. Realize that, like, if she goes home with you on the idea of let's go check out this video or whatever, or let's go well, look at my goldfish or whatever your lame excuse is, she still knows what she's there for. So you're not really deceiving her, so don't feel bad about that. And secondly, even if you did deceive her and she doesn't like it, she can always leave. Okay, like, the worst case, she leaves. It's still better that you got her back there and she left. So be willing to be creative with it. Be willing to come up with any solution, any reason possible, and give her a reason. Give her your big struggle in pulling is to take the burden off her shoulders. Make it not her fault. If you can make it not her fault, a lot of times she'll pull. Lastly, if she's with friends, sometimes, this is last ditch because you'd much rather pull her and take her to a place where you have control, but sometimes you can end up just joining the friends and then just going wherever they go for the night. And then Alex has this phrase where he says she has to fall asleep sometime. Right? Sooner or later she has to go to bed, and if you're there at that time, your odds are pretty good. So that's the thing, is just make sure that happens, even if you end up having to sacrifice the lead or having to go with her and her friends. Make sense?
Great, that's great advice. Thank you very much.
No problem. I have another one here. What are some ways to create value from the start? The biggest way to create value is to act like someone who already has it. It's hard to create value. It's a lot easier to assume value. It's a lot easier to just act in the way that you would if you had value, and then have people ping off that and get it naturally. So here's the thing, as people, when we're in a social situation, we don't respond to everything, all the stimulus in the situation, we respond to a few social cues, and we pick up on them and then just react accordingly. So a lot of times, if we're treating someone as though they have value, it's not because they actually have, like, because we've looked into their soul or we've seen their resume and we know everything about them. It's because they're being commanding in that situation. They're acting like someone who expects to have value, and by acting like someone who expects to have value, they're then granted value. So that's a really, really important concept in it. The other way is to show it to actually. So first thing is assume it. Assume it and just act like someone who should be given value. But then beyond that assumption of value, ways to build value are lead the interaction. Talk about your own topics rather than trying to jump into hers, rather than asking her questions. Give opinions, give thoughts, tell stories, that sort of things, where you're actually having a unique conversation with her that she couldn't have had with somebody else. That's super, super important. So that's another way to build value and offer value. The other thing is, anytime you can make things relevant to her, like if you can teach her something about herself, if you can show her something, that's another form of value. And also, if you're fun. If you're having fun, and if you are fun, that's another form of value. So those are forms of value. But the best, easiest way, mostly, is to just act like someone who expects to be treated as though they have value. It's not so important that you have value. It's important that she perceives you to have value, at least at the start. And then through getting to know you, eventually you will show your real value. What is this, an RSD Nation for girls? Maybe I don't understand that question. You want us to start a girl website? Interestingly enough, we are thinking about getting into like more general self-help concepts. I think Tyler talks about that a lot, so maybe one day we'll see. What else we got? All right, any last questions? All right, sounds good. Thank you guys all so much for coming out. I appreciate it. If you have follow-up thoughts, questions, etc., post them on the forum, and I will get to those as well as I'll get to the ones asked prior to the initial video, either in a video or through some sort of other medium that I'll distribute to you guys. Maybe I'll do a mass email with a specific answers to them or something. But I will do my best that I can to get to all your questions one way or another. Also realize you guys can message me at todd@realsocialdynamics.com or private message me on RSD Nation here and there with questions. I don't want to be inundated with 50,000 of them. But if you think you have a really good one that's of good general interest rather than just a specific girl question, don't ask me. There's this one particular girl, how do I get her? But if there's a question you think is just a really good general interest question that you don't think gets addressed well or has been addressed in the way that you'd like, feel free to send me that because that could be useful for everyone. So feel free to send those as well. With that said, I'm gonna get this the recording going and then I'm gonna sign out. But thank you guys again for attending. I really, really appreciate it, and I look forward. Watch for the Mission Impossible video coming next week, where I will give you guys a mission on how to do a specific type of game. And then I'll actually give you an actual exercise in field where you can go out and do it. So it'll be kind of like me sort of coaching you as we go. All right? All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks. That was great. Thank you.
Thanks.